design and marketing, and lately I'm doing like growth and product. So I just talk you through a bit of what Revolut is. We started basically like in July 2015, and since then we became the fastest growing company in Europe. So we just raised 250 million for close to 2 billion valuation. Our growth figures is like, if you go back. So basically, like, it took us roughly 2 years to actually hit 1 million users. Now we basically doubled that figure in the last 6 months. How it works is also with daily active users. We have a core focus right now to actually get people to use Revolut more on a daily basis. So every feature we release is currently triggered on this. So we're close to reaching 1 million monthly active users. The way we define an active user is someone that actually makes a transaction. So we don't really care if you open the app. We don't really care if you, I don't know, do whatever you want with Revolut, unless you actually make a transaction, because that's the way we see that you're really active with our product. The second thing is, as you can see, is like our transaction volume goes massively up because people start using our product more and more. And we also mature as a business and add a full service to Revolut. So the way we started was basically our founder found a flaw in the system, which was basically that currency exchange was very expensive. So if you went, for example, to the US, let's say you gambled, and you wanted to spend £5,000, basically the currency conversion already swallowed around 8% of your money. And so basically Nick was a trader back then, and he knew that basically exchanging money doesn't cost anything, big banks, and that's how basically Revolut was created. And since then we went from like a pure travel card to actually start disrupting the whole financial industry, and added multiple products like cryptocurrency exchange, better savings accounts. We're going to launch a wealth platform with zero interest trading, or zero commission trading. So currently we're close to 1.7 billion monthly transaction volume. I think the target is around 3 to 4 billion monthly at the end of the year. And that's probably the most interesting part for all of you. So I think like most hypergrowth companies do one thing very different to traditional startups. So basically the way we see growth, it's mostly product related. It's not really marketing or for any of the traditional channels. So the way we look at Revolut, at anything, is basically if it's big opportunities. And you can also look at like other startups like Airbnb, Uber, Palantir, or whoever is in the market. Usually the way you start thinking about something is actually that you need to identify opportunities. You need to understand really big problems in the world. To give you an example, to go back. A really good source for this is Y Combinator's startup request. So every year they publish a new list of startups or requests of ideas that someone should solve. What they identify as big problems, and basically you can just go through that list and choose any topic and start a startup, and you will get probably very big traction. To give you examples about Revolut, is one thing we figured is like people have very hard time to actually save money. I think in the US it's over 90% that doesn't have more than $1,000 in their savings accounts, which is ridiculous, especially based on the salaries that some people earn there. Second thing is, for example, cryptocurrencies was a massive hype at the end of last year. And what a lot of people underestimated is that it was very hard actually to buy crypto for a lot of people. It was very complicated and complex because it was basically built by engineers for engineers. And then suddenly it became like very mainstream, and a lot of people didn't know how to get verified for certain exchange markets, how to actually buy crypto, how the whole wallet and IDs and so on works. But there's also other topics. For example, there's still no global medical ID in the world. So I'm from Austria. My whole medical record is in Austria. So when I moved to the UK, it was basically erased and is back to zero. And there's actually no reason for this. Something that actually Apple is trying to solve right now. Mass transportation is another one. Probably you heard about, I think it's Tesla. Well, it's actually the Boring Company. So they're trying to basically try to disrupt like public transport, especially in LA. There's a massive problem with car transportation, and it's just not feasible. So they're thinking about new solutions like the Hyperloop, or I think they have these new buses that can go over cars and stuff like this. And so, but essentially you can just figure out any big problem, any like waste, health, education, and how you actually solve the problem. Go to the next one. The second thing is basically everything we do, we try to be better than anyone in the market. So we dig deep to the root cause of every problem. A good example is international money transfers. So a couple of years ago, like, it was very expensive and slow to actually move money around the globe. And to actually propose a solution for this, you really need to understand the market, you need to understand the problem, you need to understand regulations, laws, etc. So it's not just like, oh, I have a cool idea, let's fix it and build something cool. It's actually like, we probably spend 70–80% of our time just on the problem, just trying to know better than anybody else in the market how to solve that thing. So for example, for international money transfers, the core issue, why it's slow and expensive to move money from Europe, let's say, to the US, is that usually you go for a central bank. So for example, if you transfer money, there's a central bank that guarantees both banks that the transfer actually, the money flow is actually happening. And why this is important? Because when you move money, like, the transfer itself is basically instant. So like bank A says, I transfer this money to bank B. Then bank B basically has a deficit, so because the money didn't arrive yet. But if the customer actually withdraws that money, basically the bank has the risk that they actually lose money. So in order to prevent this, like, the central bank guarantees both parties that you can trust each other, and that's why it actually is quite fast. The issue is, like, worldwide, there's no central bank. So if you move money across the globe, there's nobody that actually guarantees that these money flows actually will happen. And that's why there's a lot of lending, borrowing, and intransparent practices. The other thing is basically to solve this problem is you need to understand, like, regulations in each market, how the whole financial landscape works, why nobody actually has to solved it yet, because banks make a lot of money on this. And also because of, like, in that case, it's like banks usually, they didn't have, like, global networks. So the whole data infrastructure was like basically like split up between different data centers, and they weren't really connected. So even if I, let's say, have Santander, who operates in a lot of different countries worldwide, like, their companies don't speak to each other. They don't have access to the data, and that's why they can't do this fast and free money transfers. So the next one is basically, if you're actually at that stage where you figured out what is the opportunity, what is the problem, then you need to just, like, come up with the solution. Like, something I learned quite early is, like, you should always build products that are 100x better. Nobody cares about products that is 5x better, 10x better, 20x better. Because the issue is that customers usually overvalue what they already have per 10x. They think it's way cooler than it actually is. And the other issue is, like, a company always tries or always overthinks the value that the new product is created. So actually, to make a big difference, you need to create a way better product. A really good example is Robinhood in the US. Previously, it cost a lot of money to actually trade stocks. And so what they did was basically to make it completely free. And that's basically something that didn't exist on the whole market. And that's why they have this massive growth opportunity. Some tip that we basically usually use is, if you identify a big opportunity and understand the problem, we usually copy a competitor and completely undercut the market. A good example is, for example, Amplitude and Mixpanel. So Mixpanel was the big guy on the market. They dominated the whole landscape. And then Amplitude came, basically copied the product and made it for free. So it completely killed the business model of Mixpanel. And nowadays, Amplitude is way bigger than actually Mixpanel, because Mixpanel can't compete with them. It's, in our example, it's like TransferWise and us. Basically, we have the same product as TransferWise, but we just offer it for free. So in a way, they can't compete with us, because we're doing the same thing. And once you have to pay for it, and once you get it for free. The fourth thing is basically, that's actually when growth starts. Everything you do, you should think about, like, how you can spread it to users. So if we take as a given you build something that actually is very valuable, that people like, and that it's way better than what exists on the market, how do you actually spread it across the globe? So basically at that scale and at that growth of companies like Uber, Facebook, Airbnb, you can only reach that scale if you actually leverage a network. So there's actually 2 networks only in the world that are kind of free, which one of them is basically the users network, like your friends, family, and so on. The second one is partnerships. So for example, if we work together with Uber, we basically can leverage Uber's network, like their user base. And you can do this with promotion codes, strategic partnerships, M&A, different ways. Some common suggestions for like hacking growth is like there's usually a waiting list. So something that we do, Robinhood does, Monzo does, is basically that you force people to invite someone else. I'm personally not a big fan because I don't think it actually works. So you get a lot of shitty quality traffic in, and then you have to fix it at a later stage. Second thing is feature unlock. It's something like if you have something that a lot of people want, for example, a crypto exchange, you can basically ask people to give you something in return. Something that also works in every big company is the referral systems. So usually, and yeah, last thing is partnerships. What I would mention for these 3 things is that you should always consider activation. Like you should basically, all these systems should always be linked to what you consider an activated user. So it doesn't matter much if you have a lot of signups if people don't actually use your product or don't understand it. So let's say if I just care about signups, what happens is like, let's say in this example, we ask you to invite 3 friends. If we don't care about the activation part, I can just go to my mom and say, hey, can you sign up? It takes 2 minutes, and then it basically means like, I got my invite, but the company got a user that doesn't want the product. And it's probably, I don't know, unsubscribing very soon and deleting his account again. So in that sense, what you usually see with referral programs is that the company wants you to do a certain action. Let's say Airbnb gives you like a lot of credit if you refer someone, but they actually want that person to make their first booking. So you don't get any money unless that person makes a booking above a certain value. And the reason for that is, if that person makes that booking, there's probably an 80-90% chance that that user actually sticks and will use Airbnb also in the future. One back. That's one thing I notice is probably most people don't understand how it works or don't consider it at all. It's like basic engagement. It's pretty cool to build very fancy UIs, to build great products, like the backend, the front end, the marketing. But like the most important part is actually to think about the whole user journey. So like the easiest example is actually probably Instagram. So who is Instagram? Quite good. So the way they hacked it is basically people, like it's just a natural feeling is want to have some sort of feedback. Kind of like the feedback to the speakers. So basically if you upload a picture, you do it because you want to get, like you want to have your friends to tell you like, oh, you're great, you look great, it's an amazing holiday or whatsoever. The thing is like because of all this mass communication nowadays and all this noise, people don't really talk anymore. But actually like double tapping a picture and just giving a like is not a lot of work. So basically Instagram, for example, used this to actually get you to post more and more. So whenever you upload something, they have an algorithm that gives you a certain amount of minimum likes, just to have this this feeling of like, I'm actually pretty cool. So even if you're a complete nerd, if you don't have many friends or whatsoever, there's always a way to get likes. And then you feel like as a really important person. And that's actually that's designed like in that way. It's basically like Instagram actually, like the way they push it, the way they think about that whole journey. It's not just like you uploading a picture, it's also like displaying it to the right people at the right time. Basically they want to guarantee you a certain amount of likes. And they adjust their algorithm to give you that certain amount of likes. Because if you don't get these likes, you will stop using it. And it's the same with re-engagement. I don't know if you noticed, but if you don't post on Instagram or don't actually open Instagram for a while, they send you messages about who actually joined Instagram. Like friends from Facebook, friends of your contacts. And you just do this to get you back into the app and upload a picture again and go through that whole loop. So usually the way you should structure this is like feature adoption. It's basically automated triggers that get people to actually use a new feature or product. That could be literally anything from like, let's say we want to have people to save money. So we could set up an automated trigger after the first exchange or after the first card payment or after they did more than 5 transactions last month. Something that is very frequent. Then engagement is usually like, so you're using this product, but you need to get feedback. Like if you, for example, if you're saving towards your goal, what's your progress? Something that actually makes you happy and feel accomplished. And the third one is basically, for whatever reason, if you stop using a feature, you need to find ways to get people back to use it. Go next. And then that's basically like, that's like the last bit, the last 1% is actually when you have everything ready, like you need to basically announce it at big times. So the way we do it is usually, we have these different channels, which is basically notifications, like email and pushes, blog, website, and media PR. And what we usually do is we have, for example, with, let's say crypto is a good example. We had around, I think, 250 media outlets lined up when we launched. So it was everything from New York Times, NBC, to like smaller crypto sites. That was just one bit. Then we had basically, we added a website, we added a blog, we had social media, where we have like currently, I think, altogether like 200,000 followers. And then we also stream it out to our existing user base. And basically, the bigger you get, the more reach you actually generate for this. So then, in that, like to go back to the crypto examples, because the way we designed the virality into the product, like that announcement basically pushed the whole thing because people invited more friends, and then it just went completely viral. That's basically, if we're gonna, that's basically my presentation because I thought it's probably most useful if you ask me questions and I give you an answer.